First, what I want to do is thank Andres for a great conference. Let's give Andres a big round of applause. Now, what I want to do here this afternoon is talk about not a big idea, but actually kind of a small idea. It's a small idea. It's a small idea for something that you can do to be a little bit more like some of the folks we saw up here, more like Adrian, more like Alexa, more like Jonathan and the people who were creating those great companies. And I want to explain this one small thing that you can do by telling you a story. And the story is about these guys, Andrei Geim and Konstantin Novoselov. How many people have heard of Andrei Geim and Konstantin Novoselov? Let's see a show of hands. Okay, looks like less than half of you have heard of Andrei Geim and Konstantin Novoselov. Let me tell you who they are. A few years ago, they won the Nobel Prize in Physics. They won the Nobel Prize in Physics. They isolated something called graphene. Graphene is a substance that is 1 atom thick. 1 atom thick. And has 70 times the strength of steel. It sounds like something out of Harry Potter. It sounds almost fantastical. It's a huge breakthrough in material science. Here's what one of their colleagues said. If scaled up to the thickness of a plastic refrigerator wrap, a sheet of graphene stretched over a coffee cup would support the weight of a truck bearing down on a pencil point. Huge breakthrough in material science, one of the biggest breakthroughs in that science in the last 50 years. So here's my question. How did they do that? How did they do that? To answer that question, I want to talk about artists. I want to talk about artists. Let me see a show of hands here for a moment. Anybody here have an iPad? Okay. How many people knew 4 years ago that you were missing an iPad? That's actually a pretty serious question because today in the economy, the most important cognitive skill is that ability, the ability to give people something they didn't know that they were missing, the ability to iterate something entirely new. That's the most important cognitive skill today. That's what all these folks you just saw have done. They have given the world something it didn't know it was missing. So that's what artists do. That's what painters do. That's what poets do. That's what sculptors do. So how do artists do that work? What motivates artists to do that sort of thing? It turns out there's a rich body of social science on this question, and I want to tell you one study that I think yields that one small thing, a little bit dangerous, that you can do. It's a study led by a woman named Teresa Amabile at Harvard Business School. Here's what she and her colleagues did. They gathered a bunch of artists, 23 artists. They had these artists randomly select 10 of their commissioned works and 10 of their non-commissioned works. 10 of their commissioned works, 10 of their non-commissioned works. All right, that's 20 works of art, 23 artists, 460 works of art in all. Paintings, sculptures, works on paper. She assembles these works of art, and she has a panel of art experts come in and evaluate these works of art. They don't know where these works of art have come from. She brings in this panel, says, evaluate these works of art. Here's what she says. Our results were quite startling. Now, for those of you who don't read social science journals, you should know that this is about as exuberant as these guys get. Our results were quite startling. The commissioned works were rated as significantly less creative than the non-commissioned works, yet they were not rated as different in technical quality. Let me rephrase that. Here's what happened. The technical quality of the works, commissioned and non-commissioned, was very, very high. These are people making a living in the fine arts. They know how to do their work. But over and over again, it was the non-commissioned works that were the breakthroughs. The non-commissioned works where people said, I'm just going to try something. Not the works where someone said, I'll give you some money for it. The works where they were just trying stuff over and over again were the ones that were breakthroughs. Why was this? She was puzzled by this, right? Someone's getting paid a commission to do something, and the things that they're not getting paid a commission for are more creative. She goes back and she interviews the artists, and they keep using the same word in English, constraints. Constraints. A few constraints are fine, they define the project, but past a certain point, these artists said the constraints, the painting has to be this big, it has to have a horse in it because I like horses, it has to match my green sofa, I need it on Tuesday. Past a certain point, they said those constraints were so constraining that I could do a good job, but I couldn't do a great job. Why am I telling you this? Remember, one, we all want to be like artists, right? We all want to come up with something the world didn't know it was missing. But second, the most important thing, if we look at our organizations, our businesses, our nonprofits, our schools, there is no non-commissioned work. Everything we do on the job, everything we do at school is commissioned work. But maybe there's a better way. So let me tell you a movement that's afoot out there. Take this company, Atlassian. It's an Australian software company. They do something really cool. Once a quarter on Thursday afternoons, they say to their software developers, for the next 24 hours, go work on anything you want, as long as it's not part of your regular job. Do it the way you want, do it with whomever you want, do whatever you want. The only thing we ask is that you show what you've created to the rest of the company on Friday afternoon. They call these things FedEx days, because you have to deliver something overnight. They actually called them FedEx days because a few months ago they got a cease and desist letter from FedEx's lawyers, so they now call them Ship It days. It turns out that this one day of intense, undiluted autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing products, ideas for new products, improvements to internal processes that had otherwise never emerged. Another example, this company, Intuit, big American software maker, they have a challenge. Right, for a long time, or at least in the last 5 years, they sold their software as something that could be downloaded and executed on desktops and on laptops. That all worked really well, but you know what? Suddenly their customers said, I would like your software on my Android phone. I would like your software on my mobile device. I would like your software on my iPad. Now they got to make this very complex, millions and millions of lines of software available on mobile devices. Good news for Intuit is this. Since its inception, Intuit for its engineers had something called 10% time, where people can spend 10% of their time working on whatever they want. Now, this sounds all kind of hippie, groovy, kind of follow your bliss, but this is not. It's very strategic. It's very hard-headed, because the companies that do this do not sign away the intellectual property rights to what's created on that 10% time. Let me show you what the head of innovation at Intuit told me. He says, after our CEO declared mobile was key to our strategy, none of our business units were able to change direction quickly, but our employees using 10% time created 7 mobile apps before any other formally funded mobile project even got started. Another example. You can applaud Intuit, sure, why not? Here's another example. Columbia Credit Union in Vancouver. There's a woman there named Jen Scheffner. She's a young woman, 28 years old. She runs a 6-person customer service department at a credit union. She says to her boss, "Boss, I would like to have a FedEx day for my team." Her boss says, "No." So Jen does something else. She tells her 6-person team, these are people who answer the phone from customers. Credit union members actually, here's what I'd like you to do. Take an hour every week and leave the phones. Go somewhere else. Think about a better way to run this place. Think about something we're not doing for our members that we should be doing for our members. Think about something in this organization that we can improve. And you know what? I'll cover your phones during the hour you're away. She calls these things the genius hour, 1 hour a week. Lo and behold, this little unit in this credit union is coming up with all these great ideas. What do these things have in common? It's non-commissioned work. Intuit, 90% commission work, 10% non-commissioned work. Atlassian, 361 days a year of commission work, 4 days of non-commissioned work. This credit union, 39 hours a week of commission work, 1 hour a week of non-commissioned work. Do you see a pattern here? This is where the world is going. And that leads us back to these guys, Andrei Gaiman, Konstantin Novoselov. They have a laboratory at the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom. They have all kinds of work to do. They write grants to get research. They have papers due in academic journals. But at this laboratory, they take a few hours every week for something that they call Friday evening experiments, to work on stuff they're interested in, they're just curious about. Here are the rules of Friday evening experiments. 1, it can't be anything that you have funding for. 2, it can't be anything where you have a paper due. 3, according to Novoselov, you're allowed to do whatever you want as long as it's not boring. It turns out, so 2 or 3 hours a week to work on stuff they're interested in, stuff they're curious about, and they usually do them on Friday nights because they're physicists. They made their breakthrough on graphene not in their regular work, but in their Friday evening experiments. Think about that for a second. They won the Nobel Prize in Physics. That's pretty good, right? If one of my kids called me up in 20 years and said, "Hey, Dad, I just won the Nobel Prize in Physics," I would say, not bad, right? That's pretty good. They won the Nobel Prize in Physics for non-commissioned work. Non-commissioned work. So here is my message to you as we close out this conference. If you want to have dangerous ideas, if you want to be like the wonderful people we've seen out here, carve out some time for non-commissioned work. That is where the world is going. That's how people create. If you want people to create, if you want yourself to create, people do that in conditions of autonomy. They do that in conditions where they're free of most constraints. So, if you're running a company, if you're at a company, try a FedEx day. If you're in a school, ask your students to do some Friday evening experiments. I'll bet they'll blow you away. If you, on your own, in the course of your week, want to do a little bit better, you know what? Give yourself a genius hour. Carve out some time for non-commissioned work. Carve out some time for non-commissioned work. Let me summarize. I can summarize this concept in 2 words in English. Let go. Let go. But since this is the week of Twitter's IPO, I want to summarize it in a tweet. So ladies and gentlemen, get out your phones so you can tweet this. You ready? The future will be non-commissioned. Thanks.
Bravo!